protest where? On Halloween.
Down here just to, well, I always come down here with my plan anyway. But I'm down here to protest. I own a business, never shut down, never will shut down. So it's just sad to see other people already gave up, never even tried to even resist against the government. That doesn't surprise me any means, but hopefully one day they actually get some balls or just man up. Just give it a shot. See what happens. Because you're gonna go down either way. That's what this whole thing is about bringing.
I'm Chuck Black, and this is the Age of Ingenuity, our weekly chronicle of Canada's current innovation economy. And if last week was a heavy political week for Canada, then this Tuesday was the culmination of an unprecedented period of political turmoil in the US. We are going to take a look at what the alternative media, not the legacy media, is saying about what happened in the US.
And I'm Alan Calder, and we've also reconnected with Henry Hildebrandt, who is the pastor of the Church of God in Aylmer, Ontario. He's been at the center of the anti-lockdown protest movement in Ontario almost since the beginning of this so-called pandemic in March 2020. He's been so effective that the local mayor has declared a state of emergency in an effort to shut down a planned protest in Aylmer featuring him on November the 7th. I'm going to talk to him and learn a little bit more about it.
But before we get started, I want you to remember to like, to comment, to share, to subscribe, and to support this vidcast on Patreon and PayPal. And with that said and done, here are the stories we're currently tracking. And our first story tonight is focused on the American election, which we're recording this on Wednesday. The election hasn't yet been decided yet, except in the minds of the candidates who are both leaning towards declaring themselves the winner. And for a little context in that, I referenced the November 3rd, 2020 Last American Vagabond post. Election chaos unfolding exactly as planned, predicted, and we've every reason to question COVID. It's a podcast, it's a vidcast. It argues that since both Trump and Biden are mostly funded by the same billionaire class, and they both seem to be encouraging the demonization of their opponents, there's a good chance that they're either intentionally or unintentionally on the same side. And the real object of the last few months might be something different than deciding the US presidency, perhaps just to get us at each other's throats. What do you think about that?
What I enjoyed about that was the Princeton piece that he had talked about the fact that our vote doesn't mean anything anyway. Like statistically, this in Princeton, they did they had a speech about how this and how it's useless, our votes. That was my favorite part of that article. But
I remember that as well. It goes against my grain, but I understand the logic of what Princeton, what happened, what was discussed in that article, and the conclusions they drew. I find it disturbing and well worth looking at. That's another thing I like about the Last American Vagabond. If you look down on his links, he's got lots of them. He's got more links than we have in our show. So everything is heavily referenced, and he's not a stupid man.
No, not at all. I'm just a big fan of that as well, though. But I mean, with the Trump and Biden coverage, though, honestly, like his point about them, this funded by the same billionaire class, this could have been taken right from my high school journal. Seriously, like I've thought this ever since I voted and beyond before that it's a game. It's just a shell game. They got us, and this is exactly what it is. And I mean, I'm just not shocked by it. I'm surprised people are shocked by it.
I'm not as shocked by this as I was, say, 5 or 10 years ago. I always thought that the presidential elections in the US were fairly fair and square, if only because the Democratic Party and the Republican Party weeded out the people they especially didn't like during the primaries. That happened with Bernie Sanders. this year and in 2016. That happened to a whole bunch of characters in the Democratic Party. I'm surprised they didn't dump Trump in 2016, but he went through and he actually became president for 4 years. Who knows if he'll stay president, but he's certainly going to give it a good attempt.
Well, you know what? So do they all then. But I always wonder though too, as if they're the same team playing different roles. Though I mean, it's becoming like that too for me a bit too much. That it's as they do stupid things that could only benefit the other person sometimes for a specific reason, and they make it so personality based. It's lost all true meaning to me at all. It's really a personality contest. It might as well be shot in Hollywood, like each true Hollywood president or something.
Or all-star wrestling. I mean, Trump was at the World Wrestling Federation for years and years, where mostly you put on a show when there was no real contest.
Hey, for sure. You know, I have something to say about that too. And Trump and the black voters then, like people don't understand that their lives have theoretically improved based on the economy.
Yeah.
But prior to that, he was at the events like wrestling, which black people were huge fans of like that. I know it sounds racist-ish, but for real, they make him as real salt of the earth kind of guy, you know, going to something like that for them.
Yeah, I would argue that Trump is one of the few candidates in public life in the States who treats the working class, salt of the earth Americans with a modicum of respect. The auto workers, the construction workers, he treats them like human beings. He holds them up to glory when he does speeches. He always talks about the people in the military and their wives and their families and their husbands and how they're working class, salt of the earth characters.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Democrats do that in the same way. By the same token, Al, I honestly, you're right. Sometimes I have difficulty telling their actual logical, rational positions apart. Although, you know, it's very easy to get wrapped up in the emotions of one candidate or the other.
But also, I feel as if it's political and you aren't on, and you're supporting the candidate and you're not all in, then you shouldn't be on their team. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Though, like that, it's a tough one. But like, I'm not a corporation. I can split up my money between my millions of dollars between two people. You know? Like I have my time I have to dedicate to someone. I've got to be all in. There's a reason I don't do this stuff, Chuck. I'm not into anyone enough. Like they don't say what I want to hear.
Yeah. I don't think you have to be all in to a point where you worship a politician. Politicians are supposed to work for us. You take a politician into a room and you say, you look like a nice enough guy. What are you going to do for me in the next election? If the politician says something that you like and you decide to vote for him and her, all well and good. And if they decide to welch in the deal and not provide what they said they were going to do, well, then you throw them out of office in 2 or 4 years or whenever they come up for re-election.
Is that how it works, Chuck? Or is that how it's meant to work?
That's how it worked when I was a kid. It doesn't so much work that way now. Now you get apologists for the candidates who say he meant to do that, but he was playing 5D chess and he'll get back to it at some point, but his secret plan requires another activity entirely at this time. And QAnon, don't you understand? QAnon.
I know. Thank God he's here for some vague reason.
Yeah. I don't believe QAnon stories should necessarily be banned. But I don't think they should be taken as gospel either.
I don't think strawberry shortcake should be banned either, but I would never listen to strawberry shortcake. and cartoon as well.
Yeah.
Did you talk to those guys at Dundas Square before then? Even at Queen's Park, those because they're there, as you know, right?
Yeah.
They're not quiet.
Which people?
You guys. There's a lot of Q people there. They've got
I've talked to them. Yeah, I've talked to the Q people.
And what do they say though? I chatted with them a bit, but I don't know. It was loud at the time. I chatted with them, but I was hoping you might have some more insight than I.
Some of it is that I don't know the secret code. But what I can tell is that there is an organization that is sort of called QAnon that's been posting off and on in various places on the internet over the last 3 years or so. The general consensus is that the people posting, there may be more than one, the people posting have a fairly comprehensive understanding of the political process and may even have the ear of President Trump. And they're basically telling everybody that we have this big overarching plan. Trump is going to defeat all the devils in the world, particularly the Democratic devils.
Yeah.
And every time it looks like he does something wrong, he actually really is playing the long game. He's lulling people into a false sense of complacency. He's confusing the field. He's setting himself up for future success. And QAnon has not always been right, but he's been right and ambiguous enough so that people continue to listen to him.
Well, in the first season of QAnon, he was meant to be a Q level clearance insider somehow. Had photographs from the inside of the plane, because I was, I wanted this to be true.
I don't even know what Q level clearance is.
Oh, it doesn't even matter, Chuck. Seriously, it's like I'm going DEFCON Delta. Like, does it even really matter? They could make it up anyway.
It's something above top secret.
Oh my God! Did someone say Voldemort? The thing is, it's more like he's so inside that he's got to be maybe the right hand of God or what have you. He knows everything. Like, this is if he's an intelligence officer, that's even less likely he's telling the truth.
Yeah, because intelligence officers are trained to lie and tell stories.
Exactly. They work for the government.
Yeah. I would argue that this confusion, this inability to actually go outside and trust your lying eyes. I think that's the phrase, trust your lying eyes.
It's a beautiful song.
It has infested even the media. For this, I note the November 14th, 2020 National Post post-haste article. No blue wave, but there has certainly been the revenge of the red. And it talks about, regardless of who wins here, we will be in for gridlock that could hurt U.S. economic growth. And besides, the guy that I dislike, now I really hate. And I find that just, especially from the media, especially from the National Post, which is a Canadian publication. I mean, CP24, CBC, we're as biased up here towards the American political process as anyone else in Detroit.
To be fair, we're talking about it on our show, Chuck.
Yeah, we are, but I think
just no one gives a shit. Like, sorry.
I would say that if I had to support someone in the U.S. election, I'd probably support the Republican candidate. But I'm accusing them both of being people who demonize their enemies. I said this at the beginning, intentionally or unintentionally, they're dividing up the people. They're making everyone hate. They're destroying the fabric of decency in the political process in the U.S. It's getting to the point where
it's broken. The whole thing's gone to hell, Chuck.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's hard to suggest that it's so comical. It may as well be what the wrestling world used to be, though. Sports entertainment. Then this is political entertainment here we're playing.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, I think it's entertainment for people who don't have football and baseball anymore. I think it's entertainment for people who want to feel they're participating in the U.S. political process, but the elite in America don't trust them with the good stuff.
If voting changed the goddamn thing, Chuck, they would not let us do it.
Yeah, no, I also note that Rebel News, which I normally like, they did an interesting post, the November 3rd, 2020 Rebel News post.
What'd you think of it, Chuck? I watched that. What'd you think of it?
Oh, asking Trump supporters what they like about Joe Biden?
Yeah, yeah.
I think they had trouble finding any Joe Biden likes or any good comments about Joe Biden from Trump supporters. That's what I think.
No, you don't say. At a Trump rally.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good reporting here. Nice work. Have you asked cows what they think of hamburgers?
Yeah. But you know, when you and I were kids, there was this concept, at least in Canada, of the loyal opposition. The idea that the opposite party in the House of Commons, while you disagreed with the specifics of what they were proposing right now, you accepted that overall they're all on the same side. They were looking out for what was best for Canada. They just had different ways to go about doing it. And while you disagreed with their specific ways to go about making Canada better, you didn't demonize them. You had coffee with them afterwards. You played baseball with them. You gave them the time of day. You showed them a certain amount of respect. The Americans did that too, but not anymore.
Maybe, but to be fair, Chuck, like going to a Trump rally to ask about Joe Biden, like on the day of an election, is like seriously, that's a loaded question. And they weren't bad though. They weren't jerks though. Like I assumed they would be. Generally,
Yeah.
They were trying to say their piece though, but they weren't. They were at a Trump rally. Don't forget. Like people like go Trump, go. Blah blah blah. Like, and then these guys come and say, well, Joe Biden, he's a great guy. He's not senile or whatever. But most of them were saying, well, we feel bad for Joe because he's senile, blah blah blah. But they weren't like screaming death to him or anything like that. They really weren't.
No, they weren't. I find the Republicans less full of cognitive dissidence on the whole than the Democrats.
That's a blanket statement, Sean. But I would tend to agree with it. But I understand what you're suggesting, though, for real.
Yeah, I do accept that. They're a little more willing to listen to reason and evidence, but by the same token, a lot of them, their love for Trump knows no bounds. He's just a man. He makes mistakes just like the rest of us. He's done some weird policy decisions.
I agree.
In a lot of areas, and he should be legitimately called out on those things for what they are, mistakes in policy. Maybe the coarseness of his language. He's a very coarse politician compared to some of the recent people to hold that position. Maybe he should be called out on the coarseness of his interactions. I think the idea that he's doing this intentionally and he's playing 5D chess to get one up on his opponents, I find that ludicrous.
Of course, is it though? I mean, why can't him and the Republicans and the Democrats, by the way, they both used to be called the same name as the party were, Democrats, right? They changed it from Democrats to Republican. Now, why wouldn't it make more sense that the rich guys, as we mentioned earlier, were all funded by the same companies who were making them play on the same team?
You mean the rich guys all funded, 60% for their favorite and 40% for the other guy, and then they saw who won, and then they were just they were supporting both sides against the middle.
They're supporting the system to make sure the system succeeds because that's what works for them.
Yeah, I would say that's quite possible. How about I don't even say that's quite possible?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
I would say that's a virtual guarantee.
Yeah. Like how stupid are corporations then if they're funding these politicians on both parties? That doesn't make any sense, really, right?
Yeah, to me it makes a lot of sense. It means that both parties, in order to maintain the funding, will try and take positions that either don't offend either parties or both parties will support. And then both parties will be in a position where all they can do to differentiate themselves is personality and insults. And
that's why I always take the stance of not judging politicians based on what they say they will do, but what they have done or are doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always lying for money to get reelected and live in wealth beyond compare on our backs, that we support. And I'm always trying to find it if they're doing what we're asking them to do that they say they will.
Yeah. I also, to this point, I note the September 18th 2020 Pew Research Center fact tank post under the title, "Few Trump or Biden supporters have close friends who back the opposing candidate." It essentially notes that supporters of Donald Trump and Joe Biden are divided not just in their views, but also in their broader political beliefs and values and their personal relationships. They have nobody close who they trust who can fact check them. I think that's bad for discourse in this country overall.
Oh, I agree as well. I noticed also that that it was age was a big play item in that piece too, though. And what I recall that about the age had a big factor in the candidates of opposing sides, kind of thing.
How so?
They were saying that old people are more likely to be more entrenched with their friends with the same views than the other side. If they were older, they were more entrenched, is the whole point of it.
I remember that now. I think it's.
There's a chart of it.
I think it's right. Yeah. No. There is a chart. We'll put that up on the screen. We'll include the link in the show notes. But you're absolutely right. I think as we get older and more set in our ways, not me, but everybody else, as we get older and more set in our ways, we tend to become more set in our ways, less able to think outside the box.
That's got Chuck written all over it.
Yeah, it does.
I was kidding, Chuck. The mayor of Aylmer, Ontario, has just declared a state of emergency in response to a planned anti-masking freedom march planned locally for this Saturday, noting the potential of civil unrest and service disruptions has prompted this response. To learn more, we've reached out to Henry Hildebrandt, the pastor of the Church of God in Aylmer, who we spoke with before.
It is good to speak to you as well.
Well, you've often been at the center of these recent protests. There's been previous protests in Aylmer even, a battle with local authorities to keep your church open during the pandemic, and the members of your congregation having often to travel to other cities to participate in freedom protests. And no one's been arrested, charged, fined, or even ticketed during those activities, though. But given that, what sort of terrible trouble does the local council think you're going to get into this Saturday?
Well, I guess they are determined not to have any peaceful freedom marches, whatever you want to call them. They're determined not to have any of those in Aylmer. And it doesn't seem like that they can keep it away because, for one thing, I mean, we live here, I live here. And even though I have not organized the past rally that was there and the one that's coming this Saturday, that's another couple here that has done that, failed to do so. They're not from our church or anything, no affiliation that way. But it just seems like we cannot keep it away from the residents in this area. There's a large group of people in Elgin County here that are very, very tired of the lockdowns measures that have been taken, and they are just taking their constitutional right to speak up.
Well, the Aylmer City Council has even sent a letter to the Ontario Solicitor General, Sylvia Jones, requesting a revision of the current Ontario lockdown regulations in order to limit the mask exemptions, make it easier for local police to charge Aylmer protesters. Why are they trying to get so harsh on the protesters then, more so than the past?
And I really think it is because it's a small town and they don't want any unrest here. They don't want anything that disturbs the reputation even of the town, according to what the mayor said. So I think they're just trying to keep it down if at all possible, but I don't think it's possible. I don't think they can do it.
Now, do you think that having these protests makes the town look bad or better?
Well, I do not believe that it makes the town look bad. I really don't. I think it is very important that a small town like this stands up and demonstrates how important the freedom, God-given freedom, the constitutional freedom is to them. I think it's very important. And I guess it must be important to others as well, because it seems like that the mainstream media has never paid any attention, or hardly any, to the demonstrations that happened in Toronto at Yonge and Dundas, and now all of a sudden 290 people had a peaceful demonstration in Aylmer and on it. So I don't know, I guess that's what it took to wake up the giants.
Now, which groups are involved in setting the protest up, and who do you think will be attending, if you've had any interaction with the organizers at all?
I don't think that there's any particular groups here like we've seen in other places. It's just a general cry of the human family here, saying we're standing together, we're putting any other differences aside that we might have, whether that's faith or doctrine or whatever, we're putting that aside, and we're saying, we're standing together and saying, we don't want these lockdown measures. We don't appreciate that. Our elderly are neglected. Our education system is a mockery. Our children are being abused with requiring the mask and on and on and on. We don't want that. We're standing up to our freedoms.
And so the police involvement, from your perspective, you mentioned earlier, it's just to protect the safety of the residents, then I guess, of Aylmer, but they've not really been hassling you guys then. But yet they've been tweeting out the fact that these things are causing civil unrest that they should be afraid of. What do you think that's about?
Well, the term civil unrest came from the mayor, and she must know something that we don't know. It must be from people that feel the same as she does about the freedom rallies, because the freedom rally that was here caused no civil unrest whatsoever. And we are sending strong messages out telling people, whoever attends, attend peacefully. We're not here to burn down buildings. We're not here to destroy property. Not at all, not at all. We're just peacefully standing up to our God-given freedoms. And if the mayor feels that that's what's coming, she must know something that we don't know.
Now, do you think that the press following this story would increase the size of the protest, be it Dundas or in your small town even?
I think this will definitely increase it, and that's why I don't understand why they are stepping on it, because the more you suppress it, the more people come out. So it definitely now caused, I would say, the size on Saturday will definitely double because of the mayor's reaction.
I think you're probably right then. I feel as if you'll get a few people from outside of Aylmer as well, even, to come and protest.
We have had calls today from Toronto, Guelph, Windsor, all over basically. They're coming because they are standing up for the same thing, and especially when they hear small town and there's no tolerance for it, that brings people to this area.
I hope you're right, and I would agree with that. So you're coming out this Saturday then yourself?
I will be, Lord willing, I will be in Aylmer myself this time. I will not be in Toronto.
Well, I guess this will be the first week for 6 months that I've not seen you in Toronto then, and I will see you in Aylmer nonetheless.
I hope so too. I'm looking forward to see you here as well, and I'm hoping that it will go well.
I hope so as well. And if I'll maybe chat with you, maybe interview you, regardless, so I definitely want to see you and shake your hand, because I appreciate you spending time with me today.
Absolutely. Gladly done. Thank you for having me.
We've been talking with Henry Hildebrandt, the pastor of the Church of God in Aylmer, Ontario. And those are the stories that we're covering this week. As always, the articles we've referenced are listed in the show notes.
This Saturday, Al will be covering the November 7th, 2020 protest march in Aylmer, Ontario. And I'll be at my usual spot with the Saturday Freedom protesters at Dundas Square in Toronto. And if you'd like to promote your event or your activity, or if you think you have insight into Canada's current innovation economy, then send us an email. Or even better, buttonhole us at one of the events we're attending. And my email is chuck.black@protonmail.com.
And we're currently on YouTube and BitChute, and we expect to be on Brightneon soon, later this week. Remember to like, subscribe, and share and comment on our posts. Even better, if you like the content that we do create, send some money to our Patreon and PayPal accounts. We really appreciate your patronage.
And that's all for this week. We'll be back next week with more stories covering our current age of ingenuity.